This is my review of Assassination Classroom. Okay, so this episode actually showcases Korosensei's birthday, more or less, as the title implies. It's actually happy birthday time, and it's the part where they actually manage to infiltrate the barrier and actually see Korosensei one last time before the end. And there's also kind of a late episode twist that I'll get to in a minute, but in any case, it starts off with the kids actually working to infiltrate the barrier so that they can actually get to see Korosensei one last time. And to that end, they proceed to sneak past the police line using all the skills that they've learned, and start attacking and disarming all of the different patrol groups that are actually there. And the government officials officially don't initially know what's going on, pointing out all they know is that somebody has gotten past the police line and are actually trying to infiltrate the barrier. But quickly realize it's actually the kids and begin to panic because they quickly realize that there's a lot more people there than they originally thought. And sure enough, the kids one by one proceed to actually bring down the groups. With Karma leading the charge, I should mention. He as stated in my last review, he actually takes the charge over from Izagai once they actually get to the mountain. And through his leadership, these other kids then proceed to start taking down the other guards so that they can actually call for backup. And Karma's ultimate end goal here is to actually just round up all of the guards and make sure they can't actually fight back and try to defeat him. And everybody uses their different skills that they've learned. Samari Hara actually crushes one of the guys under her immense body weight and knocks him out that way. Chiba and Hayami use their sniper skills to actually take out several guards with sleep darts. Tarasaka charges in with Itana providing cover for them using a drone he created. Basically he just starts chucking smoke bombs so that the guards can't actually see, so Tarasaka and his pals can actually sneak in and just finish them all off. And after a while, the commander then proceeds to realize that Kurasama actually had something to do with what's going on, and even confronts Kurasama over it. But Kurasama merely remarks that they're just really good assassins and that they should have expected this, considering that they've lived there for a year. They know those woods by the back of their hand, whereas all of the trained soldiers have only just now wound up there. And even then openly admits that he didn't give them the idea to actually go there, pointing out that they did this entire thing independently, and that they're more than willing to actually make their own decisions. Pointing out that they're more than capable of acting on their own and using their skills, and that when push comes to shove, they will actually use their skills to actually get what they want. And Irina here, who is standing next to Kurasama this entire time, ultimately remarks to herself that he said that entire thing like a proud parent. But in case, the students then proceed to take out all of the guards, leaving only their captain. And the captain is kind of like the final boss of the group, because he's a trained soldier, and he ultimately knows he overall knows what all of their skills are going to be. And case in point, Chiba and Hayami both fire a round of sleep darts, but they hit his collar, which he specifically uses to stop their sleep darts, and points out that it doesn't matter if they got the drop on him, because at the end of the day, now that he knows what he's up against, he's more than capable of taking them out. But in any case, it then proceeds to get into a kind of a battle royale between this one guy and the entire class of Class 3E. And he quickly shows to be more than a match for them until he's eventually taken down by a tag team of Nagisa and Karma, with Nagisa using his stun clap and to actually not only take out the guy's knife so he can't actually fight back against them, but also using the stun clap to immobilize him, and then Karma suplexes him into the ground and presumably knocks him out. But they also start celebrating too soon, because everybody's happy that they finally took down the last of the guards. But Kaede is quick to point out that the guy's still moving, and Tarasaka has to come in and finish the job, and then yells at Karma and Nagisa for screwing around rather than finishing their own fight. Torasuga comes in with his stun gun, just knocks the guy out, and then proceed to go through the barrier, where they once again run into their teacher Korosensei, who has been waiting for them to show up. And just basically tells him that he was expecting them to arrive, and he's glad he finally gets to see them one last time. At which point they run up to him, pointing out that they've been racking their brains to trying to find a way to actually save him. But Korosensei ultimately remarks that he doesn't feel like he can be saved, because through a spiel he actually points out that the government has thought of everything to actually make sure that he can't actually leave. And B, even if he did try to escape, as he points out, the government doesn't want him to escape, because he quickly realizes that now that he's no longer a confidential secret, that he can now no longer live a life by himself, even if he does survive the assassination. Pointing out that he realizes that he could never coexist with people in the first place, and knows full well that he's never going to actually be able to basically go on and live a merry life like he intended. At which point Hayami actually realizes that Korosensei knew the whole time that he was going to be trapped like a rat. And Korosensei doesn't really deconfirm this, pointing out that there's not really much anything they could have done. That they ultimately did the best they can, and that he's ultimately happy that they used all of the skills they employed to actually see him one last time. But Tokuyata, she is kind of upset by this, pointing out that if they had known something was coming, they could have used their skills to take out the barrier generators. They could have spread word that Korosensei wasn't dangerous. They could have done a lot of things that could have prevented Korosensei from being captured and ultimately killed by a giant laser. But when she ultimately points out that it's not fair, he consoles her and tells her that there's nothing they could have done, pointing out that all of those situations could have been dangerous, but he does also point out that he doesn't really mind being trapped and almost shot with a laser, pointing out that not only would the laser completely destroy his absolute defense form even if he did survive, but he also points out that he doesn't really mind, because at the end of the day everybody put all of their hard work and effort into actually taking him down. And he can't really be mad about that. His assassination more or less is the convergence of all of the world's scientists and greatest minds coming together to take down one super being. And he's more than happy to do that, because if his assassination is ultimately what brought the world together, then he's happy. However, Torasuga and his friends do bring up some important points, pointing out that they're not particularly happy about what's going on, pointing out that even then they could have done something, because the odds are still 1% of him blowing up. So even then he'd be more than willing to take those odds, and that if they had done something to actually stop it, they could have told everybody that he wasn't dangerous, and that admittedly a bit of a pervert, but not dangerous. And that they definitely feel like they were losing battle from the start. But Korosensei once again stops them, pointing out that even then he points out that the main idea of life is that it's not always fair, but you can either go with the flow or try to overcome it. And in the case of the assassination classroom, they more or less did the latter. As he points out, all of the skills that they've learned weren't completely wasted, and that they can actually use them to actually benefit themselves in the future. Pointing out that they found different ways to actually confront different problems, either by confronting it head on with a sneak attack, confronting it head on using a sneak attack, basically they now have a versatile series of methods that they could use to actually defend that they can use to actually benefit the world. And that ultimately he hopes that if there's one thing they took from away from the assassination classroom, is that they have options, and that they can use their experiences to actually go out and better the world. And that's what he wanted. But then Torasuga kind of groans to himself, pointing out that it was more or less just a long-winded method of them getting a lecture. And Korosensei doesn't deny this. He points out that there's no time for a lecture, even when he feels like he's about to die. But he ultimately stops himself because he smells sweets, and points out that Ryo Nakamura has actually been carrying herself a little bit more delicately in the battle. And ultimately asks her what she has in her bag. And she basically confirms this, pointing out that she actually brought Korosensei a birthday cake. As she points out, it's been a 1-year anniversary since the moon blew up, and now it's 3 hours from the deadline. So as she points out, she brought him a birthday cake to celebrate his final birthday. And Korosensei is both moved to tears and also drooling uncontrollably because he hasn't had sweets in a week. But after Ryo snaps at him and tells him to knock it off, they then proceed to grab the candles and put them in and light them. And then sing Happy Birthday to Korosensei. And while they're doing that, Terasuka actually makes a bit of a fourth wall joke about whether or not they actually had the rights to sing Happy Birthday. And if you guys don't know, it's kind of because the Happy Birthday song is kind of ambiguously in the public domain. Some people have just tried to claim the rights to it, but in actuality, it's kind of in the public domain. But although some people have ambiguously tried to claim the rights to it, so it's kind of a little funny side joke that was a thing, because around the time this anime aired and around the time this series was written, it was actually kind of implied that that was actually a thing, that the Happy Birthday song was ambiguously in the public domain. So obviously Terasuka is calling attention to that, the fact that they may or not be able to use it, but he's ultimately shut up and they continue to sing Happy Birthday. At which point they tell him to blow out the candles, but Korosensei remarks to himself that his wish has already come true. But as he's about to blow out the candles, a massive black tentacle emerges from the woods and smashes the cake into a mess. At which point, Yanagisawa actually emerges from the woods alongside his dubbed 2.0, who is revealed to have since been transformed into a tentacled super being, although we can't actually see his face because he's still wearing a suit. At which point Yanagisawa confirms that he's actually he's actually been working hard to actually make sure Korosensei is finished off, and that in the time being he's actually been working to actually create a new super being, and reveals that the super being, and then proceeds to reintroduce the super being that he's now indeed created, reintroducing it as the Reaper, who has since undergone the antimatter tentacle implantation, and has since become a massive, basically a dark version of Korosensei, as Yanagisawa describes it. He looks like Korosensei, but is a lot bigger. So yeah, he's a lot bigger than Korosensei, and obviously everybody begins to panic because they quickly realize that they were unable to actually keep up with the Reaper back when he was still human. And now he's been implanted with the tentacles, so obviously he's a lot faster and a lot more dangerous. At which point, the Reaper and Korosensei then proceed to battle, but it quickly becomes apparent that Korosensei is barely able to keep up and defend himself. And there's a good reason for that, because as Yanagisawa explains, the Reaper not ultimately begged that he to be implanted with the tentacles and become this super Korosensei basically. But he remarks that there was a reason for that, which is that there's actually a good reason for why he was implanted with the tentacles, which is that he is actually more than capable of actually controlling them, and as Yanagisawa continues to explain, not only is the upgraded Reaper able to actually move at Mach 40, which is double what Korosensei is able to move at his fastest. But in addition to that, he also requires no upkeep. He will not explode once he reaches the end of his lifespan, and he's also in addition to that built for fighting, whereas Korosensei is really not. So he's ultimately the strongest super weapon that Yanagisawa has created. So Yanagisawa remarks that he's ultimately proud of what he's done, and ultimately that he's basically created a godlike being that can easily destroy anybody and beat any army at the cost of only being able to live for a few months. And also the government are quick to point out that they quickly realize that Yanagisawa isn't supposed to be there, but ultimately decide that he's fine because they can use that to collect data. At which point Kurosama remarks that he should be allowed to wrangle up the kids, pointing out that he and Irina have actually dealt with them before, and they need to get out of there because clearly they're in danger now. So yeah, he then tells. So yeah, they then ask the government to help, but it's ambiguous as to whether or not they were allowed to. But in any case, as Korosensei and the upgraded Reaper proceed to battle, Kaede begins to chew out Yanagisawa, pointing out that he never actually does any of his own fighting, and that he's always hiding behind somebody else, and that he should actually pick his own battles for a change. At which point Yanagisawa remarks that he's more than willing to, pointing out that he asking a very rhetorical question about whether or not she thinks that he is actually capable of fighting his own battles. And case in point, pulls out a syringe gun with another tentacle seed in it, and then he proceeds to inject himself with it. And only a couple of students actually realize what's actually going on until he starts to transform. And Yanagisawa ultimately points out that he's more than willing to experiment on himself and become another tentacle being, because, as he explains, he's lost everything. He doesn't really have any other reason to live for, so he's more than willing to put his life on the line to become a superpowered being, or as he describes it, a temple for which godlike powers can reside. And with that, he then proceeds to transform into a tentacle being himself, although he doesn't look much different than his normal standard form, with the sole exception being that his arms actually turn into tentacles and are able to actually unfold like a helix. But in case, as Korosensei and the Reaper are battling, Korosensei is knocked to the floor. At which point Korosensei points out that there was one thing he forgot to mention in his previous lesson, which is that even if you run and find a new confrontation to actually avoid, he points out that eventually the battle will eventually come, and that today is that battle. And also this episode also showcases Korosensei and the Reaper's relationship, which is that, and kind of further explains what Mr. Yukimura actually said to him all those last year, that his student was ultimately looking for approval and didn't get it. Case in point, we see a montage of the Reaper trying and failing to get Korosensei's approval with a bunch of different projects. And Korosensei just kind of turning him down, pointing out that he should really focus on the lessons that Korosensei had taught him rather than trying to make up his own stuff. And that's ultimately what caused the pure hatred that is now fueling the upgraded Reaper. He's fueled by pure hatred because Korosensei kept shunning him and never giving him the actual time of day and actually letting him prove himself. So obviously he has a lot of frustration that are now quite literally manifesting themselves in the form of the tentacles, which is why there's a confrontation at all. Obviously the Reaper found out that Korosensei was indeed his former master and is now kind of venting all of his frustration out on Korosensei and is trying to kill him and kind of just rip him apart limb from limb using his newfound power. So yeah, that's an interesting point to leave the episode off on. That this is ultimately a battle that was long awaited, because we knew Korosensei was the Reaper. We also knew that the Reaper was his former student and betrayed him. And now we also find out that he was actually seeking Korosensei's approval. And this episode further implicates that, pointing out that that this battle has actually been building for a while, and now the Reaper is kind of the final boss of Assassination Classroom. So yeah. So yeah, this fight's been building for a while, but now it's actually coming full circle. Korosensei was the Reaper. He was experimented on by Yanagisawa to try and turn him into a super being. And now the Reaper has come back to kind of get his revenge against his old master and try to get him to finally recognize him, which kind of brings Korosensei's entire arc full circle now. He now has to confront his former student and prove that he does indeed respect him now. So ultimately, that's what this episode is. It's just kind of showing that Korosensei now has to finally acknowledge his first ever student and maybe fight for his life to actually try and do that. But for the time being, that's my review of Assassination Classroom. What did you guys think? Let's get the discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also, be sure to check out my Patreon if you want to help support the show. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks. I'm always saying thanks. So if you want to go and help support me, then by all means, go down in the description and do that. Also go check out my website, because in addition to listing you guys on my website, I also post written reviews. I'm working on a couple. And also be sure to check out my Twitch in the description below as well. I stream regularly over there every Sunday at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. So if you guys want to go check that out, by all means, go ahead. We've been streaming Utopia for the past month and a half now. So if you guys want to go check that out, by all means, go do that. Go follow me over there, so you guys know when I'm actually going live. And I will also upload the VODs up here. So if you miss one, don't worry about it, because it'll be here. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So, if you want to see more of what you like, or try something completely different, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But, regardless of whether or not you do any or all of those things, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!